And now, to officially kick off BBC, we are thrilled to welcome our keynote speaker, Julie Sandler. Joining Julie on the stage is our BBC LLC fund manager, Jen Lynch. Jen Lynch is returning for her fourth year as the managing partner of the Bend Venture Conference Growth Fund. She's also a managing partner at Portland Seed Fund, a venture capital fund that invests in early-stage companies based in the Pacific Northwest. She has been investing with Portland Seed Fund and as a limited partner and angel investor in several local funds for 15 years. Jen also chairs the Oregon Innovation Council and serves on the board of the Ben Lapine Education Foundation. Thanks, Jen and Julie, for being here. Take it away.
Hi, you guys. Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for coming.
Jen, thanks for having me.
It's frosty out there. You're getting a proper Bend experience. So Julie was briefly introduced as being a partner at Pioneer Square Labs and also the Venture Studio. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, it's on and you're ready to go. Talk to us a little bit about the two different things that Pioneer Square Labs does and how they differ and what your role is in managing those two wings of the fund.
Yeah, so PSL is two things, as you say. And by the way, everybody under the age of 25 always asks, PSL, does that stand for pumpkin spice latte? Thank you. It's Pioneer Square Labs, although I feel like we should just lean into that a little bit more. We are both a venture studio, I believe by every metric now, the largest venture studio in our region. And two, we're also a pre-seed and seed stage focused venture fund that invests in early stage companies all over the Pacific Northwest. The team is comprised of a group of partners, but we also have on staff, engineers, designers, product, marketing, ops, finance, and recruiting folks who work with local co-founders to co-create from scratch totally new companies with local entrepreneurs. And the venture fund is technically separate, but one of the cool things about the structure of it is we took a big piece of the carried interest, the upside, and allocated it to every one of those engineers, et cetera. So even the pure venture fund portfolio companies really have, a big platform team around supporting them. A third of our companies are women founded, a third are BIPOC founded. In most cases, it's the CEO who identifies as underrepresented, and the partners as a group have been, investors and founders in the region for anywhere from 15 to 25 years, and have been fortunate to be a part of a lot of the great success stories. So it's a real desire and a source of fulfillment to get to pay that forward as we grow our organization.
Cool. I would like to hear a little bit more about how you got into this job. I think all of you know that you don't really sort of pop out of school to become a venture capitalist. I don't know, I feel like maybe you did. This is a thing that it seems like everybody trips into. So talk a little bit about how you went from business school to Madrona to doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, I originally was going to be a psychologist. That was the original plan, and ended up doing a bunch of product work in the years after college and went to business school where in my dorm room, I found the phone number for a VC in my hometown. It was his landline. And I picked up the phone and I called the guy and left an embarrassing 4-minute long voicemail on his landline, basically saying, "Hey, I'm from the Northwest. I'd love to meet with you." And to my surprise, the guy called me back. And he's like, "Well, great. When you're, back in town, for the holidays or whatever, let's get a cup of coffee." Which he did, and I kept in touch with him over the years, and eventually ended up hiring me as a very green associate at the firm of Madrona Venture Group up in Seattle, where he worked. I grew up through the ladder there to partner over about 5-6 years, and then spun out to actually join him now at PSL. That person is my current partner, Greg Gottesman. And so we've been working together now this is our 14th, going on 15 years working together. And I always remember that because, this too, we get a lot of cold calls. You get so many cold calls. It's rare that someone leaves a voice message on a landline for me these days, but a lot of emails, et cetera. And always think about that. One, how transformative that was for me in my career to have, his mentorship, his championing me from the get-go. But two, to remember that really great stuff comes through the cold call. And so few people have, I don't know, the conviction, the guts to make the cold call, and it really pays off. And we can talk about that a little bit too, but that really left a big impression on me.
Yeah, that's great. I do miss, I have to be honest, I do miss sitting in my office all the time and answering that line that was plugged into my desk because we've talked about this. We've at Portland Seed Fund, we've also invested in a cold phone call when I've answered the phone. So it does happen.
By the way, like, I think there's 4 companies that I'm thinking of in our portfolio, 2 where the investment was a product of a cold call to us, and 2 more where we were cold calling ourselves. Yeah. And it's, that's a meaningful percentage of the total portfolio. So stuff over the transom, works.
Amazing. So you're from the Northwest, and like my fund, Pioneer Square Labs, invests in the Pacific Northwest. Can you talk a little bit about that thesis? What percentage is in the Pacific Northwest, and why do you invest that way? Why not just search about?
Yes. 100% of our portfolio is in the Pacific Northwest. 100%. Yes. Most of it is in Seattle. I would say Oregon as a state is sort of 2 after the sort of greater Seattle area. We see a little bit out of Vancouver and British Columbia, a little bit out of Eastern Washington, even a little bit out of Boise. But I would say that's sort of the breakdown of what our entire pipeline looks like. If you were to look at our CRM software, like it starts looking like that and the output looks like that as far as our ultimate investments at the bottom of that funnel. It's incredibly important to us that thesis is not only maintained in how we approach our entire deal flow and investment ethos, but it's also important to, I think, how we think about the opportunity too. So the Pacific Northwest, from a pure capital perspective, is a mind-blowing mathematical equation. Because if you look at the actual pure exit returns, like where the rubber hits the road, like the companies that are selling and going public, net, like we're usually number 4 or number 5, like as regions in the country, as far as sheer dollars, sheer returns to investors. But if you actually look at the amount of homegrown capital, right? And you look at the regions above and below us, it is mind-blowing, right? Like above us is, I think, usually like LA, below us, maybe Boston, and the sheer number of funds, the sheer number of local groups that are investing. I mean, it's a travesty on one hand. On the other side of things, it's so important that there are local homegrown funds investing in this region, because it's fabulous when the success stories of people who are building companies here end up funding, your local children's hospital wings, right? And not, the San Jose, whatever. I think that's vital. 2, I think this is one of the most incredible regions from a culture perspective. The founders here, not only do they have fantastic track records of success, but on top of it, they are heads down, they are focused, they have a lot of experience, they hire employees who are more loyal, and on top of it, they don't get caught up in a lot of the Bay Area chatter. Who wrote you what check? What party are you going to? Who's hiring who? It's very heads down, very fundamentals focused. But there's, positives and negatives to that, right?
Well, we talked about this, that there are so many positives to the sorts of people that we see as entrepreneurs here in the Pacific Northwest, but they sometimes, in comparison to their counterparts, for example, in the Bay Area, not to pick on them, but, pitch their companies in a slightly different way, what I have noticed, and are maybe not as aggressive. Is that fair to say? Or
Oh my God. Okay. So I feel like if you've been in the Pacific Northwest for more than, call it, 5 years, you've been breathing a very particular flavor of oxygen. It is the air of passive aggression and humility and, that down home, outdoorsy authenticity in the name of transparency. I am who I am. And this is a liability. This is something that we all have to overcome because, as you say, like most of the capital is, in fact, in bigger hubs and louder hubs. So if you go down to the Bay to pitch one of the 2,899, seed funds down there, I promise you, the founding team that is pitching right before you is so full of bluster and bloviation, et cetera, that every VC you meet with is in a habit of like discounting whatever you say by about 28%.
Yeah.
So if you go down there and you're like, let me tell you what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what we're learning about. Let me tell you, why I could be the person who does this impossible thing. You're not going to get funded with that. You got to go down and bring your most like braggadocio, confident, like I am the inevitable person mindset. Can I tell a story here?
Yeah,
This,
of course.
This is like my favorite story that illustrates this. And I've told it before. Like I'll call it a tale of two founders. This was like when I first started in venture capital, this experience kind of blew my mind. I knew two founders really well who went on almost identical journeys, like eerily similar. They both started their companies at the same time. They raised the same amount of funding at very similar time frames. They had products in similar categories. They both ended up selling after a few years to household name companies, but were objectively like terrible outcomes, like zero to investors, but they found, a landing spot at a, really nice name companies. And what was so amazing to me was how these two founders told their stories. So founder A, like, would go around town, just like beatboxing, like I built and sold a company. It got bought by these incredible people at this company. We are building the next generation of amazing products. So few entrepreneurs have this experience of selling a company and having such a success like me. Oh my God, I'll never forget this. Twinkle in their eye, just amazing. And by the way, like everything that this person said was the truth. It's like there was nothing inaccurate there, There was a lot more positive affect, I think, than I might have otherwise communicated. But, it was all the truth, just their version of it. Okay? So founder B goes around town, oh, wow, what an incredible set of learnings that we had. The things that I took from this experience, I will bring with me to the next things that I do. I'm just so relieved, so gratified that we found such a great landing spot for our employees who've just worked so hard. And I can't wait for future chapters, right? Those two founders, by the way, there's a lot you could say about them. One actually has roots in the Bay Area. You could probably guess which one. There's also one that was identified as a woman, one identified as a man. You could get into a whole conversation about that, and you can guess which one was which. But what was really interesting is what happened later, right? So founder A, the woohoo, like I'm amazing, moved somewhere else, raised like $50 million seed round off of that story. And founder B, kind of got, mixed feedback. Oh, why don't you take some time, work in a big company for a while, still doing that. And I really believe that the way that those two founders are perceived in the startup community, are treated in the innovation ecosystem as stories, just night and day. And so to me, like, that was one of the most profound learnings that I had early on, because we have to pitch a lot to raise our funds as well, right? It's really important how you tell your story. And there's always a spectrum. There's like one side of the spectrum that's like true transparency, like you're talking about all the things that like aren't going right, because let's face it, things are always not going right. That's the very definition of building a startup. And the other side is all bluster and all marketing. And, Pacific Northwest entrepreneurs need to find that spot on the spectrum, not on one side of it, but somewhere in the middle, depending on the audience. This is true when you're pitching investors. This is even true like in your board meetings, right? Like you got to arm your constituents with great stories to tell too. And if you're so focused on the notion of transparency and humility and authenticity, you're missing a big opportunity to breathe new life into your story and into your companies.
And just to sort of drive it back home, like the reason why it's important is because, again, we have an ecosystem here. There are funds here. It's great, super active. There's 8 to 10 of us in Oregon that are investing, and maybe in like all, at least 20 in Washington State. But when you are ready to take that next step, it is going to involve leaving the region. And being able to have those conversations outside of region is extremely important. I'm wondering, when you are starting to work with a company, and you have to pitch your fund to them, the sorts of things, you have those conversations. Is that, is that one of the things that PSL says they will help guide as they go? Just talk a little bit about why an investor or why an entrepreneur would choose to work with PSL and not maybe one of the other funds, or in addition to.
Yeah, unlike a lot of our friends running funds in the Bay Area, the fact that, every fund in our region is so unique is very, very helpful.
That's true.
From our point of view, we're all relatively small partnerships. And so the first rule of thumb I always say to local founders is, sure, take my word for it, but call every founder that I've ever worked with.
We do the same thing.
Right? Yeah. And ask the hard questions like, what's it like to work with her on a rainy day? What's it like to give her bad news? What's it like to shut down a company? What's it like to take a company public with her? All of those questions are always going to be best directed to the people who've actually worked with the VCs that you are interviewing. And as you say, like it's a two-way pitch. For us, the PSL thesis is it's unique in that we are a team that's also building venture scale companies side by side with you. There's a lot of advantages as far as how we can rally around both strategically and tactically. The network is wonderful when you've got a team that large for a fund this small, and we're able to spend a lot of time with every company. And that, I think, hopefully, when prospective portfolio founders call about us, that's what they hear. But most of all, I think the most important thing is the who. Like, we don't sell a product. Like, there's just us, the partners, right? Like, that's it. And so what I would say is, as you go and you raise capital and you have your choice of multiple firms to work with, it's really, really easy to index on brand and website value proposition. And all of those things are real. Like, there's real benefit to those things. But in the end, think about the who. Think about the person who will be taking your board seat. I say this to my students at UW who ask about this. Like, what if you get a board member that you don't like? Like, what happens in that situation? And I always say, well, the average U.S. marriage lasts 5.5 years.
That's not very long.
Not very long. If you kind of factor in the divorce rate, 5.5 years. And the average relationship that you have with your pre-seed or seed stage VC board director is on average 11 years. And there ain't no divorce. So you better do your due diligence. You better go on not only multiple dates, but ask around and make sure you know exactly what you are getting into. You get one board. We get to make lots and lots of investments in different companies. And so I would even argue that due diligence process should be just as heavy, if not heavier, on the side of the founder in the who. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so let's talk a little bit more about that process of matching you guys with entrepreneurs. So what sorts of deals are you looking at right now? What are you excited about? What do you think that we are good at in the Pacific Northwest that, remains our sort of competitive advantage over other regions? Like, talk about you don't have to tell us all the secrets, but like, what is the deal flow like?
We were joking before this segment here on, should we, like, how long will it take before we say AI?
Okay. We made it 27 minutes before I didn't say the word AI, but I want to talk about it.
I was hoping you would. I wanted you to break the curse. So I would say that about between 70 and 75% of the deal flow out of this region that we are looking at right now would be an AI first type investment in industry X. We're not doing a lot of horizontal in general next gen AI right now, but a lot of vertical specificity. So if you were to look at our most recent investments, God, I feel like embarrassed like talking about it. It's like we're walking cliches. AI applied to cybersecurity, defense, education,
Yeah.
real estate, accounting, space exploration. I mean, it's applied to all of these hyper specific verticals. And there's a question right now, like, is it overhyped? Is it underhyped?
Mhm.
Is it perfectly hyped? I don't know, but what I know is it has been mind-blowing to see how these really long-standing pain points that have existed in these verticals for years and years can in fact be addressed, can be solved in totally new and interesting ways by virtue of the fact that you can do things right now that you could not have done 18 months ago or 24 months ago. And so, like, when people, will come through, I'm sure you get these like inbound meeting requests all the
Mhm.
time, like, Julie, like, I want to talk to you about how I can find a job in AI. To me, it's like, it's a means to an end, right? Like you would have said mobile or software
Right.
before that or what have you. I mean, it's really an important medium and set of strategies and muscles that you can bring to bear in solving problems in new ways. And when I see a company that's doing that in a vertical that's like hungry for it,
Mhm.
the market is huge and there's some interesting founder market thesis. Oh man, we get so excited. There's a lot of that right now too.
It's so true. And I do think you're right that there are founders who have seen these sticky business problems, entrenched for their, multi-decade career that can all of a sudden be solved, all of a sudden be solved. And that's super exciting. And I think it's okay if we add the word AI to the end of every disruption. I have no qualms about it. There was a time when I could make everything that we invested in a SaaS company in some way or another, whether it was like farm machinery or apparel. And now I'm feeling that way about AI. We could make everything kind of an AI. Okay, great. So I guess the last thing I wanted to ask before we take some questions is about your your thoughts on what the next few. So okay, you guys know that this has not been an incredible few years for venture capital. We're seeing sort of like slower exits. Things have been a little sticky. How are you feeling about the next 12 months? Are we back up and running? Are people going to sell their companies? Is it happening?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm of two minds, like half and half. And I think we really kind of have two portfolios right now at PSL too. There's like the haves and the have nots. We talked about this a little bit. If you are a company with a fantastic why now thesis, whether that is AI or climate or energy or some theme where it feels like there's interesting inflection points being reached, it's a very different market right now. It's easy to raise money. You'll see like many term sheets coming down simultaneously for very competitive rounds, which is exciting and emboldening for a lot of early stage founders and mid stage founders. And then there are like a group of really great companies that are growing beautifully that were priced in early 2021. And, we've got several companies in the portfolio that like are just like they're stars, like they're doing fantastically, but the valuations reflect the exuberance of that time so dramatically that it's still a game of making every dollar count and realizing that, every dollar you spend is actual what runway that you need to have in place so that you can achieve the next milestones to meet the new comps, the new multiples. So very different mindsets. And when you jump in and out of these companies that are in the portfolio, like your mindset, your mood,
your
It's
mood.
all different.
I've been saying these companies that are the ones who haven't been able to easily raise. These are our Pinot Noir veins with their vines like struggling through the limestone, and we all know that in the end this is going to result in some good wine. So I remain optimistic. Okay, so I think we're taking questions now. Is that right?
How about a round of applause for
Oh, yeah.
these two brilliant people? Due diligence on the part of the founder. Brilliant. So much brilliance over here. Thanks, Julie and Jen. So we are going to take questions from the audience. You will use the QR code. I've never been so happy to see a QR code. You will use the QR code to text your questions. And I want to say huge thank you to VLOC Systems for helping us manage this type of question taking. And we will do our best to get through as many questions as we can in the next 15-ish minutes. So let's see. Do we have one up yet? Looks like we're still waiting. I know you got to type really fast. Well, I have a question. How did you two first meet?
We were saying that I think we've known each other for a decade, probably a long time.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
I came up to you at maybe a Portland Seed Fund event. Yeah.
Probably
Mhm.
like 10 years ago. So I have been doing this for a little more than 10 years. And when I started, and you can probably say the same thing, that the number of check writing women who could write checks at venture capital funds was small enough that it would fit on a Google Doc or a Google Sheet. And it really didn't have that many rows. And it was this embarrassing little Google Sheet, and it was sort of shared around by people. And gosh, things have changed, which is great. It is great.
Yeah, I think that deserves some celebration, actually. That's very exciting. So we have a question here. How has your MBA helped you in your career? This is a great question.
And where did you get your MBA?
Harvard Business School.
Yes.
I did not know what the word equity meant when I applied to business school.
Because you were a psychology major. So I went to business school after being a journalist. So very similar. But yeah, so talk about what that meant when you went.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect we've been on some parallel paths here. It was unlike a lot of my classmates in business school who were deep in the business world. It was all very intimidating for me. I went to math camp at the beginning of the MBA program, and I was wide-eyed. I thought it was so cool, and it was neat because it was all new. And so in addition to all the amazing relationships and friendships and network that an MBA offered me, there was just so much that I didn't understand, and it helped me understand prior roles I was in different ways, and it really got me excited about the world of innovation, which was why I cold called that dude to begin with. So that was a really transformational experience for me. I know it's kind of a cliche thing to do with oh, you got an MBA, check. For me, it was a really monumental effort and really exciting chapter of my life because it opened up so many new doors.
Are there any super cool people from your class at HBS who have companies we would have heard of?
Yeah, there are. Oh my gosh, under the spotlights, they're all leaving my head right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a couple. Let me get back.
I know. Think about it.
But there are.
My class was Siggy's Yogurt. You guys like this?
Oh.
And then also Compass Real Estate. Pretty cool, right? That's the other thing is you meet these people and they're sort of sitting next to you and they seem like they're equally confused about what is going to happen with their lives. And then,
and you know what?
Then you give them a few years,
we all still are.
I know.
We're just as confused, but there's purpose to the confusion now.
They might bring us Icelandic yogurt. You never know. You never know.
It's just a different type of confusion, right? It's just a different flavor. What can Oregon companies do to get accepted into the lab?
Oh, so, our lab, we don't have classes or cohorts. We actually operate with a similar motion of a VC fund. So email one of us. We're all first name at psl.com. This is a cold email is fine. If there's a takeaway from today, it's cold messages are fine. But in the message itself, just mention, why you feel that you're the right person to build whatever, vision that you have. If you're interested in some of the ideas we're working on, we also, sometimes look for CEOs for concepts that are already in motion. But just reach out, and we're all on LinkedIn and all pretty responsive. So just reach out. There's no application process.
Good old LinkedIn. It's really having a time right now. It's It's really good stuff.
It's hard to keep up with, though.
I,
It's just, yeah.
I agree. What's the largest ROI to date you've seen with your fund? Who was it, and how did it go down?
Oh my gosh, I've got 2 funds that I've been a part of, Madrona and now PSL. PSL is young. So we don't publish our ROI numbers yet because they were all pre-seed investments over the past 6 years. But what I will tell you is my favorite company that's one to watch as far as being more mature in its story is Boundless Immigration. Boundless Immigration is focused on naturalization, green card, and visa application processes for immigrants to the United States, and is now the largest provider of immigration services to individuals who wish to immigrate to the United States. Think of it as like sort of a next generation intelligent TurboTax for that mountain of paperwork that, if any of you have gone through the process, have inevitably been stuck with, need lawyers for, et cetera. The company was founded by Xiao Wang, who was previously a former director at Amazon, who went through the process himself early on in his life, and they're kind of like Series B, Series C stage right now, and that's absolutely one to keep your eye on. It's here 100% in the region, so including some folks I think in Oregon who are working for the company.
How incredible. This is a question from a freshman in college. They want to know, what are some things they should learn or know?
Oh my gosh, some things to learn. God, what a great question. Like when I was a freshman in college, I thought I knew everything. So, okay, here's a fun one. If you want to make an introduction to somebody else that you want to connect to people and grow your network that way, always ask for permission before you make the introduction. This is called the double opt-in introduction. So if someone asks you, hey, could you introduce me to this person you met at the Bend Venture Conference? First, send an email to the person that you know and make sure that they're okay taking on the meeting, because it's really awkward and hard if you don't have time or bandwidth, which ends up happening a lot for folks at this conference. So the double opt-in intro, never force an introduction down somebody's throat.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. It's like these are the things you just wouldn't think of, right?
I know.
So, Julie, you said you get so many cold calls. You need pizzazz, but your homegrown cold call got you your job. So, aside from leading with AI, how do founders get through the noise to get your attention?
Oh, I love the word pizzazz. Did I use the word pizzazz? I wish I had. Pizzazz. So, I mean, the pizzazz around who over the what. In other words, share with us a bit about who you are in a very short and succinct way that is the most, again, like braggy version of how you talk about yourself. This is really hard. It's hard to talk about yourself this way. But if there's an accomplishment that you're most proud of, especially if it's relevant to what it is that you are building or would like to build, lead with that. Share the why. So you started with the who, the why, like, why is this something that, we should track, hopefully invest in? Why is it exciting? And then conclude with why now? Going back to the why now thesis. Why is now the right time for something that hopefully has never been done before? It has previously, to this date, been impossible. Why now? Why is it possible now? Why is this, an exciting moment for you to build exactly this? That's 3 or 4 sentences, a short, succinct email. Gets me hooked, right?
And I'll say too, I mean, so much of the noise that we receive is not necessarily, it's because it's things that our funds don't invest in. I mean, PSL is really committed to the Pacific Northwest. My fund is called Portland Seed Fund. If you are located in Helsinki, we are not, I can't. That is not how we work. And so I think, don't underestimate the power of being from here, leaning into being from here, and using that as an intro. I know you appreciate it too. How many Helsinki?
I was getting that same email from that guy in Helsinki. He just won't stop.
Oh,
I know.
They're darling. I want to do your thing. I just not literally Portland Seed Fund.
But sorry, Helsinki.
I also want to say too, like, expect no response. Expect a no. right? Like you have to go in not feeling like you're putting yourself out there. You have to go in like it's part of the machinery, part of the motion of what you should be doing to create new relationships. By definition, I think venture investors are receiving hundreds of inbound things every day that they're desperately trying to triage. And you could make a full-time job out of just responding and following up to every email with, here's why I can't, but here's, a bunch of new introductions that I can make for you. I wish I could do that for every single email. I know Jen does too. But just expect silence and expect a no, but send them out to a lot of people and have it be personalized. It's a worthwhile few hours to spend once a quarter. And, if you don't ask, what do they say? The answer is no. Anyway, expect a no and be pleasantly surprised and have great things happen when you get the yes.
Well, I wish we could keep going because you are so good with questions. Both of you, you really have a lot of great stuff to share. And I'm sorry we didn't get to this question because it was very good. But thank you both so much, Julie and Jen. It's wonderful to have you here. What an incredible way to kick off the conference.
Thank you. Thanks so much.